Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Hudson Board of Education regular meeting, September 9th, 2008. We also have the annual meeting at 7 o'clock this evening, so we're under a little bit of a time constraint, so we're going to move fairly quickly through this agenda. Before we get going, we do need a clerk. Cindy and Tom are not here this evening, so any volunteers?
Mr. President, I'll volunteer.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Any opposition to Lynn serving as clerk? I don't think so. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
We'll begin the meeting then with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you'd please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, board members have a copy of the agenda in front of them. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the agenda.
Move approval of the agenda as presented.
Motion by Mark, second by Brian. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Next item is comments to the Board of Education from Travis Melcher. Travis, if you want to come forward, and if you could state your name and address, please.
My name is Travis Melcher. First of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity of being here. I am one of the kids who did vandalize the school back in '07, and I am sorry for my actions and the role that I played in that. I'm hoping we can move on from this. And I did learn a valuable lesson, such as think for myself and think long term, don't just think short term. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Travis. As you know, there's been other students that have come forward and said similar marks, and we certainly accept that, and we're willing to move forward. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is approval of the August 12, 2008 regular and closed session Board of Education meeting minutes. Entertain a motion for approval.
I move that we approve the regular and closed session meeting minutes from August 12th.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion,
Second.
and we have a second by Lynn. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. There is some correspondence, Lynn, if you could acknowledge that, please.
Sure. There's a correspondence from the staff of Rivercrest in support of the opening of the new school, and also from Dan Weischerding. He's a high school custodian, thanking the administration and board for a plant in honor of the death of his mother.
Okay, thanks, Lynn. Superintendent's report, Mary.
Well, I'll start out with 612 Space for Learning, just announcing our board work session. And we are going to focus on space for learning options, long-term space for learning options for grades 6 through 12. The administration had spent some time identifying options from the facilities task force work and some additional options that are for your consideration. The date of the work session is Tuesday, October 7th. And we'll start at 5:30 with dinner, and then start the meeting around 6 o'clock and adjourn by 9 o'clock. Moving on to the opening of school, it has been an extremely smooth opening for our 8 schools in the Hudson School District. Rivercrest, our newest school, our newest sustainable school, welcomed students on September 2nd and joined the other 7 schools of excellence in the Hudson School District. And certainly we want to credit a number of people, and I'll wait to do that until the annual meeting, but we do want to recognize a number of people who worked very hard to make that happen. The dedication day for Rivercrest is Saturday, September 27th from 9 to 2, and we are doing that in conjunction and partnership with Camp St. Croix. So I hope our community will come out and join us for that day of family activities and also to tour the school. I have a few more things. Let's see, our staff certainly throughout the district worked very hard to get ready to open each of the schools, and that is from the Administrative Service Center staff, the secretaries at each of the buildings, our principals, and then our teachers. Many, many teachers throughout the district were in early before they needed to be back, preparing their rooms, preparing curriculum materials, and getting ready for students. And our support staff certainly was doing that as well. I think of all the things that happened this summer, our facilities and grounds staff and all the moves that had to happen, moving people from rooms but also from buildings and across the district. It was a very significant summer of work, and really compliment everyone who helped make that happen on the Hudson team. I wanted to just spend a few minutes and talk about, we've opened now our 8th school, our 6th elementary school. And certainly we did that because we needed additional space for learning. Our other schools, our other 5 elementary schools, were significantly impacted by how many students were in those schools last year. And I just wanted to point out some of the changes that have occurred by using Rock as an example. Principal Amy Hamburg is beaming these days, knowing that she has a school that has sent students to Rivercrest, and so her enrollment is down, but there have been quite a few changes that has allowed to take place, and I just want to go through a few of those. The art classroom is back in the original art room, and they have sinks and a kiln again, which they did not have. The football locker room is back as the high school locker room, and it became an art room along the way, and they actually had to empty it for every home football game. So they don't have to do that anymore. The staff room is back in its original place, and that means they have a dedicated conference room because that was the staff room last year. So they have now a conference room for parent meetings and special ed meetings and SMART goal meetings and more. Their computer lab room moved back from a very small, inadequate space for all the computers. It was warm, and it was also very difficult for teachers to move around and get to students and help to support them in their work. So that's moved back, and they actually had an additional room where they took their computers on wheels, and so for right now they have 2 computer rooms that they're just thrilled about. And during map testing, they usually have to close down the library to get that all done. And so this year, they will not have to. Usually it's shut down for 2 weeks in the fall and 3 weeks in the spring. So that's something that won't happen this year. The halls at Rock, Amy's has last year had to have one-way halls because they are narrow, but she said, I think kids can go both ways now. And she said, I think our halls have actually grown. 60 well outside of Rock, the bus and car traffic and pedestrian traffic. It was a lot for that neighborhood and for the school. And so they've gone from 8 buses to 4. And Amy said the 4 buses, it comes so smoothly and looks very safe. And I know she had concerns last year. The car traffic in front of the school, the drop-off area, is working very smoothly. And again, with more students, we had significant concerns. And we had parents who came out and helped, parent volunteers who helped monitor that to help it when we had more students. But it really has been a relief to Rock and to the staff to be there into an environment that really is enhancing the learning environment. It's much quieter, safer, and they're able to maximize use of their building. again. So thank you to our community for supporting our newest elementary school and making this happen for all of our students, elementary students throughout the district who are affected.
Thank you, Mary. We'll move on to,
Oh, Dan, I forgot one thing. Sorry, I got really into that one. I did want to talk about numbers for the first, essentially these are the second day of school, September 3rd. And essentially the numbers that I'm talking about are a little different than any of the other numbers that we look at later, but just it gives you a flavor of where we are. Because these numbers are how many students are actually in seats and have excused absences. And so we don't have any other count that's just like that. So it's not apples to apples when we compare. We have a total of students on September 3rd as 2,316. And what that represents is maintaining certainly our increases from the past. It looks like it'll be a slight increase, but not significant. I think that knowing the economic times, maintaining and moving ahead slightly would be what we would expect. There is an elementary increase from what we can tell right now, and again, enrollments always fluctuate, so we will not know what it is until the third Friday in September, and that's the official count. We have a middle school increase, and then we have a high school decrease in the number of students. Now that's just right now on September 3rd, that's what it looked like. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those.
Mary, I do have one question on the enrollment numbers. So on the third Friday, how are those numbers collected, and how is that different than what you have shown us here?
On the third Friday, this is the count that we use for state aid.
Right.
And so that's called the official count.
Right.
And it's taken throughout the state at all
Right.
schools in the state and the school districts. And it is our enrollment from early childhood all the way through 12th grade. It includes other groups of students like our GITO students who are coming to school in the evening or after school hours, our youth options students, those students that are just going to youth options, open enrollment students both in the district and out of the districts, special populations of students who may be attending other schools, but they, for various reasons, who are district resident students. And so it combines all of the different categories and puts those together. We can look at our numbers in multiple ways as a result of that.
And the reason that that's different than this particular document then is because this is a very quick pass at students that were in class plus excused absences, and it doesn't necessarily incorporate all the things that you just described.
Right. I've made an adjustment thinking about that, but again, I can't make it exact,
Sure.
An exact comparison. And I know Tim it looks like you wanted to add something to that.
No, I think Barb hit it on the head. It's closer to a pure head count than making all the adjustments that Mary had spoke about before.
Thank you.
All right.
okay, thank you, Mary. We'll move on to reports, the review of the annual meeting report. Is this Brian or Tim? Brian?
I'll just say a couple.
Okay.
I'll just say a couple of comments and pass the torch over to Tim. So just most of my comments I'll save for the annual meeting, but the Finance Committee did meet and has reviewed the 08-09 annual plan and budget and support it. It's a fiscally conservative budget in comparable to previous years. That still allows us to fund our continued growth in the district and our initiatives around 2025 and opening up Rivercrest. There were four kind of key elements that we had to make sure that we budget around this year. Number one was the opening of Rivercrest. There was an increase of operational costs due to that. The good news is we didn't have to go to a levy override to fund the operational costs. And number two is there's a 40% less fuel cost with Rivercrest than if we opened up a traditional school. Number two is we had to support, with the redistricting plan, we had to hire a few more teachers to support the redistricting plan, so that was an additional cost. We got hit just like we do in our homes right now with increased fuel costs for transportation and for heating and cooling our schools. And finally, Tim will go over the details, but because of the TIF district and an increase of $190 million in our valuation, the state is basically funding our budget, our general fund, 4.5% less this year than they did last year. So some pretty significant challenges I think we have a good solution around. I'll cover some of the comparables in my report on the annual meeting. But I think rest assured, if you look at cost per member for this district versus others, we're the 366th lowest district in cost per member out of 371 districts. And if you look at the largest districts in the state, that have more than 5,000 students, we're number 28 out of 30, the lowest 28th out of 30. So, and our mill rate is 26th lowest out of 30. So. We had some challenges we had to work through, but I think we're in good shape financially, and also with our strong balance sheet and cash flow, we were able to keep that AA2 bond rating, and we're able to save the district $200,000 and something for refinancing some of our general obligation bonds. So, with that overview, I'll pass it to Mr. Erickson.
Okay, thanks, Brian. As part of the requirements for year end and for the next budget year, we do review with the whole board last year's numbers and the current, what we're projecting for the budget at this point. And as Brian had mentioned, the Finance Committee has reviewed the numbers through June 30th for last year's operation, and those are at this point unaudited, although the audit is about 90% complete. We can't call those audited until we get the report. And then the Finance Committee has also reviewed the budget at various times during the past couple of meetings. So with that, just to give a brief overview of the numbers, I'd ask you to look at your annual meeting book. Cool. You know what? Can we take about 30 seconds? I've got to grab the book.
We have it in our board package. Has it been changed since then?
Actually, I need to get you the new book. Yeah.
No, I was just back there. They're not here yet.
Why don't you just use this and
Hot off the press.
Why don't we just move on in the agenda and come back to this?
Okay, thanks, Brian and Tim, and we will come back to that. Brian, FYI, I think there's 426 school districts. You said three.
Yeah, there's 371 K through 12s districts.
Okay.
Some of them are unified high schools and K through 8s.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sandy?
Good evening. Is this on?
Why is this guy doing that? It's the fastest running man now.
Good evening. Fine.
Go Rogers. It's so good.
We'll do Plan B. Do I have power yet? Am I on? Okay. All right, this evening we want to share the report regarding ACT testing and AP. AP stands for Advanced Placement. And we are very pleased to announce with our ACT, you can see for the second year in a row, we have maintained at 23.7 as our composite average. And so ACT, most of us know, most of our kids take that at the end of their junior year. It's a curriculum-based measure of college readiness scored on a scale of 1 through 36. And so then our average, again, is 23.7. This is the measure that most of the universities and colleges within the Western Western Wisconsin, but the middle of the country actually use as far as entrance requirements. SATs tend to be used on both of the coasts. So we're very pleased to see that maintenance as we're doing our moving on up, that for 2 years in a row we have maintained at 23.7. Some of the other pieces that we want to share regarding the ACT is just thinking about those parents, families looking at moving into this area. If they've made a decision to move here, they often do call and ask to compare test scores, whether it be state, which is a little more difficult, Wisconsin to Minnesota, but ACT is a national comparison. And just recently in the September 2008 edition of Minnesota Monthly, they did list out the Minnesota scores for all the districts. So we pulled some of those around our area, Matamidi, Stillwater, Park, and Woodbury. The high schools, their enrollment is pretty comparable to Hudson, and you can see that 23.7, we rank second then among those 5 that we pulled out. As we're looking to move on up, you have seen before our comparisons with the highest performing districts throughout the state of Wisconsin. And you can see then with Mequon, Thiensville, Whitefish Bay, Elmbrook again. Elmbrook has 2 high schools and they report those out separately. Cedarburg, then Hudson, and Kettle Moraine. So this gives us our challenge as we keep working with our SMART goals and stretching as far as where we can go. You can see it's not only just the composite score comparison, but the percentage of students taking the assessment. And so I've spent some time talking to Principal Lucas, the high school principal, and we're going to try to dig a little deeper into some of those districts just to find out, do they do test prep? Is there any requirements that they have in place regarding ACT? What's their percentage of students that do go on to college? Does that match with the number of students going and taking the test? So we just want to dig a little deeper and see what's going on for those comparison points. But again, provides us some comparison and some other stretch opportunities. When we look at advanced placement, again, just making sure we understand, our community understands the definitions of those college-level studies that students participate while they're in high school. But then every May, students then can take the advanced placement exams, and if you score a 3, 4, or 5 out of the 5-point scale, you can earn college credit. It's up to the university or college, but many of our students do earn college credit. We currently last year had 9 AP courses. This year we did add AP German. So 209 students took 321 tests in May, and 243 were actually enrolled. So you can see there are students that do participate in those rigorous courses, but make the decision not to take the assessment. When we look at pulling out a few of those results, our drawing students, the art advanced placement 100%, English language composition 100%, calculus 96, you can see chemistry 92, psychology 87, and English lit, the composition 83% passing. When we look again,
what is a passing score? Is it a 3?
3 is passing, 3, 4, or 5. Yeah.
Thank you.
And then if we look at a comparison, just some trend data, you can see we're closer to the number of students 2 years ago that actually participated, the number of exams, closer to last year's, and then our passing rate comparison, which you can see did come down a little bit. But I tried, because there's always a story behind each data point, tried down below to explain that a little bit. We did have some courses where the number of students participating, like in advanced placement U.S. history, advanced placement, I believe drawing went down in the numbers of students. But in both calculus and psychology, you can see the numbers of students participating in those AP courses increased, yet our percentage went down. The other piece regarding psychology is we had a change in teachers. A first-year teacher teaching AP psychology did an outstanding job. When you get 87% of your students to pass the first time you teach that level of course, that is an excellent job. So she knows over time, as she keeps working with AP psychology, that that score will increase. But it's just a little bit of a story behind our score taking a little bit of a bump in the downward direction. Mr. Lucas and I did talk again about these as well, and we really want to put the emphasis on increasing, to start with, the number of students participating in advanced placement courses and taking the exams. Because the research is out there. My last line there on the slide, high school students who take AP courses are more likely to be successful in college. And that is proven by research. And the success is both their GPA in college, their ability to complete college in 4 years, and just their overall readiness. So we want students to take those more rigorous courses, even if they don't pass. The success that they'll find in their next careers in university or college level will be improved by taking those courses. So we're going to focus on increasing the number of students, and then we'd also feel as we get our system moving on up and making sure that that rigor is throughout the system, that we'll also see that passing rate increase. But we're seeking the support of really making sure that we get more students involved. As I mentioned, we did add AP German this year, and we also have a proposal that we'll be reviewing to possibly add AP Government as well this following year. So the teachers are rising to that occasion because it is an extensive training that goes through, that they must go through in order to prepare for that piece. So, ACT and advanced placement. Thank you.
Thanks, Sandy. Any questions?
Yep.
Brian?
So I understand that ACT is a more of a, you know, in the Midwest. But, you know, everything you read, you know, most comparables, you talk about the SATs. What percentage of our students take SATs?
I would have to get back to you. I don't know. It's a very small percentage, though. Only those that really are thinking about doing an East Coast school.
Okay. Yeah, I completely agree that, you know, it's a little disconcerting seeing the number of students in AP classes going down from last year. I know that the SMART goals is something that you as a district focus on, but man, I would sure like to see a building SMART goal around you know, number of students in AP classes, about some of this. I think this is pretty important, and it'd be good to kind of rally around this particular topic. There's so many different things that we can focus on, but you know, getting the attendance in AP classes up, I think, would be a huge focus area. So, thanks for the data.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for Sandy? Okay, we'll move on to topics for action. The 08-09 district goals. I believe board members, we have discussed this in the past. I certainly know at the committee level we've gone over this. Mary?
Well, I just would like to focus, you're absolutely right, Dan, both the Governance and Policy Committee and the Learning and Program Development Committee looked at these goals. Our focus of emphasis this year is an HSD 2025 implementation, and as you see, there's 3 goals that are working on two action plans, one in global literacy and one environmental sustainability for us to move forward. And then also a curriculum adoption process will be reviewed and aligned with the HSD 2025 strategic plan and vision. The other area is space for learning, and there are 3 goals also there. The first goal, Rivercrest will open as it has on September 2nd and be on budget, and then the gateway will open at the time of our dedication. I have to tell you that students are already moving back and forth using the gateway, and heard some really great things about what's happening as they are using Camp St. Croix. And then the third goal under Space for Learning is the development, of a long-range Space for Learning plan that aligns with HSD 2025 to be developed to address the needs of grades 6 through 12.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Any comments, questions?
Comment.
Go ahead.
Just keep, it's always good to see what's going on in different neighboring districts. This year in South Washington County, I think 6 new Chinese teachers started to teach Chinese in South Washington County in the high school.
That's neat, yeah. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion for approval of the 08-09 district goals.
So moved.
Motion by Mark.
Second.
Second by Barb. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Next item, topic for action, is the energy management recommendations. Tim?
Okay, if you turn to page 50 of your packet, we have the proposed energy management services agreement between the school district and CESA 10, Cooperative Educational Services Agency number 10. This resulted, we had started looking at a couple of different energy management companies and determined that CESA's program for now is something that we'd really like to enter into. And the services that they would provide, if you look about the middle of the first page, on page 50, they'll advise on settings for lighting, ventilation, heating, and cooling systems. They'll test for malfunctioning equipment. They'll train our maintenance staff on any additional servicing and maintenance of the equipment. And for that, it's a performance-based contract. And as they look at deriving savings, their estimate in looking at the district, and they are familiar with the district energy usage, they're estimating they can save about 20% over the course of 3 years of the contract. If you'll note that we do have an opt-out on page 52 of the contract, and that's after 1 year. If we determine the service just isn't working or isn't what we had expected, we do have an opt-out clause here. It does come with a slightly elevated cost versus staying in the contract for the 3 years. And I'll just probably refer you to the last page, 55, in which there's an example of the cost savings and then how much it would cost the district to derive those savings. When you look at the top of the page, on the left-hand side is total energy savings, and that's for each year. And CESA 10 is projecting annual savings of 10% in the first year, 7% in the second year, and 3% in the third year. So the net savings to the district in year one is 52% of the savings, or about $49,000. If you go to the next, go down to the bottom rectangle, CESA number 10 share of energy saved, the cost for us is $45,000. So the contract calls for 48% of savings the first year. In the second year, the fee that we do pay to CESA does decrease by 1% in the second year and then 1% in the third year, and so on. So when you look at the very bottom right-hand side, the accumulated energy savings over a 6-year period is of just a little over $1 million. And total cost to the district for fees paid to CESA for their services, if you go to that box, the box, CESA number 10, look on the right-hand side under column 5, that's about $270,000 to save $1,023,000. There are no payments. If we don't save dollars, there are no payments. And CESA takes our base energy readings from our meters in the district, and that's what they derive savings from. And we do have Tad Beeksma from CESA here to answer any questions if you have anything of a technical nature that you'd like to ask Tad, or anything of a general nature. So.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Any questions for Tim, or what was Tad?
Tad. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question just regarding, I guess, and maybe this is a question for Tad in terms of how successful you've been with other school districts, and is this a fairly good estimate of what we can expect?
Yeah, we have districts that have participated for the full 3-year term at this point, and of those districts, we estimated from the beginning that they would save 20%. It ended up hitting right at 20%, so it's accurate. Some save more, some save a little less, but over the whole, 20% is the number that we've hit with those original CESA 10 schools.
Okay. Can you give us a flavor of what kinds of things you typically, find the most savings in?
Sure. There's 2 different areas that we'd concentrate on at first. One of them is human behavior, how the teachers and staff are interacting in the building and how they're using energy. The more they know about costs and associated rate structures, the better they can help the district be more efficient. The other one is we do quite a bit with HVAC set points. We can actually make the environment more comfortable while saving you energy. This is something that we do all day, every day, and we've worked with districts all over the state and have been able to find great numbers by doing that. So, without getting overly technical, I guess that's the answer.
Okay. Sounds like a good program. Brian?
How many of these have you done?
How many schools?
Yeah.
We currently have 15 schools, districts signed on. So it's anywhere, district size anywhere from, I believe, 5,000, 6,000 students down to 500. So it's quite a variety of different school districts and around the state in the different locations.
And how many years have you been doing it for?
4 years the program started.
And how many people have opted out, early opt out of the program?
We've had 2 out of the 15. So.
And then the energy cost, is that based off of, given our current rise in price per, price per unit? How do you figure out the savings? Is that in current, kind of in the current cost, or do you keep a historical record where the costs were, or how does that work?
No, we run it off of current costs. So let's say you used 100,000 kilowatt hours last year during this month. You use 90 this year. The savings would be 10,000 kilowatt hours, and then we'd multiply that by the current price to figure out the savings in dollars.
So because some of this goes retroactive, so you go back 3 years, you're doing at current rates?
Current cost, yeah.
How's weather factored into those calculations?
The only weather we take into account is heating degree days, so temperature during the winter. And you could measure, this year versus a 30-year average and make a compensation for that to make sure that if we have a warmer than normal winter this year, we would have to adjust for that.
Ted, I have one question, and that has to do with the school districts that you've worked with. Do you typically find that there is an upfront investment of some kind of equipment in order for the schools to realize the savings that you have seen?
No. Really, when we screen, when we talk with school districts, what we do is we walk around the district, and we've done this here, is to walk the floor, see the equipment, see what you've got, see how you're operating it, and try and figure out, is this something where they just need equipment, or is it something that we can change operationally and through human behavior? And I believe Hudson is one of those where it is a place where we can make quite a bit of change without a big investment on equipment.
Thank you.
We've actually turned down quite a few districts for that reason, that they would be better on a different program. So.
Yeah, Tim, I don't want to nitpick. I just want to get your view on that. If we go back and we look at the cost savings based off of kind of net value versus 3 years ago when utility costs were 20% cheaper, isn't there potential to pay our percentage shares actually higher than it would have been at the time when the price per unit was lower?
Well, I'd have to say you either would have an energy management program or you wouldn't. So the dollars that you expend next year without an energy program versus the savings, to me it doesn't make sense to base it on the current costs, because if we had done nothing, we would have paid those current costs in the energy that we consumed. In looking at the 2 different programs that we had looked at, this program actually is a little bit more inexpensive for us in terms of overall savings and what we're paying out to the energy manager. It's about 3% savings overall, cumulatively.
I see one question for Tad, Dan. Regarding the human behavior component of this, Tad, is a lot of this simply elimination of teachers, let's say, personal appliances, little fans or space heaters, that kind of thing?
No, it's partially that. I mean, you can go that direction. I would suggest something like that, and it would be up to you to say whether or not you wanted to go forward and implement something like that. Many districts around the state have. But it's also how they operate. I mentioned how you operate within the rate structure. There's a component of the rate structure which is electrical demand, which is about 50% of your electrical bill. And most teachers and most average folks would not understand an industrial or a commercial electrical bill from that aspect. But limiting that demand number even, turning their lights out during, say, for when they go to lunch, you can eliminate demand peaks because you've got cooking equipment, cleaning equipment, air conditioning, and those sort of things. In the districts we worked in, once we let these people know that, hey, turning off your lights for an hour may not save that much on kilowatt hours, but on that demand side, you can save a lot. And some of those different things have gone a long way. Without getting into too much specifics, just basically turning things off is a big part of it, and educating them to how much they can really save in doing their part.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, thank you. And this is a topic for action, so I'll entertain a motion for approval of the energy management recommendations and enter into this agreement with CISA.
So moved.
Motion by Mark,
Second.
second by Lynn. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. We'll move on to the Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton's Energy Star Schools Challenge. Mary.
Lieutenant Governor Barbara Lawton is known and identified by the Madison Cap Times as being the Wisconsin Green Leader in our state. She is committed to clean air, clean water, clean soil, and certainly dedicated to our environment. And so she has taken on a challenge to find 100 school districts who will sign on to the EPA's Energy Star Challenge. And essentially, the EPA estimates that if energy efficiency of commercial and industrial buildings in the United States improved 10%, America would save $20 billion and reduce greenhouse gases equal to the emissions of about 30 million vehicles. So she has approached school districts to take on this challenge. We are positioned in Hudson to do that. She's asking for a 10% reduction over the year, and your action to take on an energy manager and some of the other actions we've taken prior to this time really fall in line with that. We've certainly learned about sustainability and green design, construction, and using green products, and more at Rivercrest. Our 612 Space for Learning, the assumptions that you have endorsed and voted on, actually has sustainability and extending that to our other buildings over time. So this would be another move to do that. And also HSD 2025 and our graduate learner outcome on environmental sustainability, and certainly that's one of our priorities because it's one of the district goals to move that forward. And so we are positioned to actually be in a very good position to sign on to and take up this energy challenge. It's good for our students, good modeling for our students, staff, parents, and certainly community. And it will be helpful to our taxpayers as well as we reduce the energy costs that will be part of our, could be part of our budget. So we encourage you to support this initiative so that we can sign on. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, or Tim or I.
Any questions for Mary? Certainly seems to be consistent with And what the school district is doing, as Mary stated, through its strategic plan and, sustainability emphasis and commitment. So if there's no comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve this initiative for the Energy Star Schools Challenge through the Lieutenant Governor's Office.
Mr. President, I move we approve the district taking on this Energy Star Challenge.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second by Tom. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion's approved. Next item, Nancy, if you can talk to us a little bit about the administrator, coordinator, supervisor's contract addendum.
Okay. On page 58, this is a contract addendum for administrators, coordinators, and supervisors. This was considered earlier by the Personnel Committee. It is a benefit in lieu of health insurance, which would provide that full-time administrators, coordinators, supervisors who could demonstrate that they have health insurance through a source other than the school district would have $3,500 placed in a tax-sheltered annuity or a tax advantage medical expense reimbursement account in lieu of receiving those same health insurance benefits from the Hudson School District for a full school year, and they would receive that payment at the end of the school year. It is essentially a cost savings measure for the district, and it is the same benefit for the same cost-saving reasons that we provide to our teachers.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Any questions, comments?
I just had a question, Nancy. I probably should remember this. I know we talked about this at length, but is it going to be up to the participant to decide whether it's going to be a TSA or the medical expense account, or have we worked out those details
Let
yet?
him answer that if he could.
We're probably more looking at the medical expense reimbursement account. It would be, we left the language open, so this is similar to some other language that we have at the time, but most likely it's going to be an HRA, health reimbursement account.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any other comments, questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Just a question, is this intended to replace then these individuals' health insurance? Is that the idea of this?
If they can, if they're otherwise eligible for the health insurance and perhaps even taking it at this time, if they can demonstrate that they're covered otherwise, yes.
Maybe just add that, of course, the overall goal of this is savings, health insurance savings to the district. And, we're looking at probably saving somewhere in the neighborhood of, on a single plan, somewhere around $5,000, and on a family plan, somewhere around probably over $15,000. So it's just an incentive for that employee if they have spousal coverage elsewhere. Because a lot of people they will maintain two plans, one through their spouse and one through another employer. And essentially, they don't have any out-of-pocket because one's a primary coverage and one's secondary, and secondary covers all of the deductibles of the first plan. So sometimes because the coverage is affordable enough to the employee, they'll just opt to take two plans. So this would curb some of that activity.
Okay.
So Tim, to follow up with that, that's basically the profile of the individual that would be possibly opting for this, is that if they had another plan in the household. That makes sense to me.
Right. They need to provide proof of insurance through another, health insurance through another carrier outside the district.
I have one more question. How many people fall into this administrator, coordinator, supervisor category? Do we know?
Approximately, there's approximately 28 who are full-time.
Okay.
It's the same thing that we have with the teacher's contract.
Right, same language. Right.
Identical.
Good point.
Entertain a motion.
I so move.
Okay, a motion by Tom. Second by Brian. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. We'll move on to the consent items. And if someone could recite the total expenditures.
Mr. President, move that the Director of Financial Services be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,544,511.73, along with all the other consent items.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Lynn. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. We'll move on to the committee reports. We have 4 committee reports. We'll start with Tom and the Facilities and Grounds Committee.
Certainly, and much of what was on the agenda on August 20th was covered tonight, so I won't go over that again. Present was Mark Kaiserschott and Lynn Robeson, along with staff members Mary Bowen Eggerbrotten, Tim Erickson, and Jim Staskell. There were 6 agenda items on that evening's agenda. We talked about and reviewed actually tabled, but on the agenda was the EP Rock Safety and Security Edition. Tabled that because we didn't have complete information at that point in time that night. The Rivercrest construction update was the next agenda item, and as we all know now, it was ahead of plan, and at that time believed to be a day or two ahead of schedule and on budget. The speed limit signage update Tim Erickson provided for us, and at that point we were looking for Paul Rademacher to do the signs, and the bases would be completed by the end of the week and up by the end of the month, which would have been August. And as I drive by, it's up and working and the lights are flashing. Gateway construction update followed that, and there's reseeding, regrading, seal coating on the floor of the Gateway tunnel. Rubber membrane is with an expandable joint. Still working on the gate security fence at this point in time. And then we heard the last 2 agenda items, which I won't cover, which is the Energy Management Plan and Lieutenant Governor's Energy Challenge.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Any questions, comments? If not, we'll move on to the Learning and Program Development Committee. Barb?
The Learning and Program Development Committee met on August 21st. We spent a fair amount of time as a committee talking about accepting whether or not we as a district would amend the current policy that we have for accepting alternative coursework for high school credit specifically. At this point, the committee's recommendation is that we do not amend that policy, and we expect to revisit that topic again next spring. As we saw earlier today, the committee also reviewed the district's goals, specifically around the 2 areas that we will focus on for 08-09 for the HSD 2025. And the committee also heard about the program that has been developed and will be implemented this year to do mentoring for the 2 new principals that we have in the district this year.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Any questions, comments for Barb? If not, Finance Committee, Brian?
Finance Committee met on the 25th of August. Barb, myself, Dan, Mary, and Tim. We looked at a revised budget that we'll present, that Tim reviewed tonight. So we did a few revisions since the last board meeting. We looked at the budget impact for opening Rivercrest. When we went to the voters prior to the referendum, we talked about $830,000 and $300, $830,300 as our estimated operating cost, and we came in around. It's kind of hard to figure out account for every dollar as we open up Rivercrest, but we were within that guideline. We're about $775. We also looked at the additional staff for the redistricting and the cost that was, just to make sure that was in line with our budget. We reviewed our budget history to ensure that our budget was in line with previous years. And then we reviewed and prep for the annual meeting tonight.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Any questions, comments for Brian? One other item that was on the posted agenda is the Governance and Policy Committee, which I chair. And many of the items that we covered were already covered in this evening's agenda, such as the policies and procedures. We reviewed that, the 08-09 district goals. We also spent a little time reviewing the handling of student disciplinary matters. We had an attorney's opinion a year ago on that as looking at some alternatives to how we handle disciplinary matters. And then we also took a look at this evening's annual meeting agenda and some of the preparatory work for that. I'll entertain any questions. Okay. If not, I don't believe we have any citizens request to speak, do we, Diane?
Mr. President, we need to go back to the budget.
We do? Okay. Are we up and running? Turn it back over to Tim.
Can you hear me? Okay, how's that? Can you hear me? Okay. All right, just bear with me. Part of the review of of last year's financials and the budget for 08 or 0809 are in our annual meeting book, and I'm just going to go to page 23 of that book, which I know you don't have yet. It's on its way.
All right, no. Can you hear it? No.
A little bit.
Well, maybe, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stand up and talk.
can hear you.
Can you hear me okay? Okay.
Yeah.
Just
All
have to
right.
stand up.
That's better? Okay, just maybe get it a little closer. Yeah, that'll be fine. Okay. The top section is general fund, is looking at the general fund, and it goes through what our beginning fund balance was for 06, 07. That year is audited and complete, obviously. 07, 08 is unaudited, but like I had mentioned before, about 90% of the audit's complete. We don't expect the numbers to change. And then the budget for 08, 09. And you see the beginning fund balance there for each of those years. And by design, that fund balance was planned on decreasing as we took dollars out for Rivercrest, for the building of Rivercrest, and the Administrative Service Center. So you can see where we fall. If you look at ending fund balance, which is the fourth line down, for 08, 09, we're projecting to end the fund balance at just a little over 14 million. The next section is revenue and other financing sources. If you look down about a third of the page down, it's subtotal local sources. You can see the revenue there for the 3 years. The big one, obviously, 210 under the heading local sources, and that's $23,285,000 for 0809. That is the preliminary tax levy. And I say preliminary because these numbers will change up through October when you do adopt the final budget. Valuations will change. As new information becomes available, we will update it along the way. Okay, if you go down to the bottom third of the page, you'll see subtotal estate sources, and that's state revenue, 23,024,900, and 24,200 are the numbers there. And you can see if you go up to the middle of that box, line 620, state aid has actually gone. We're projecting that to go down this year, and part of the reason for that is the TIF district, which was the St. Croix Business Park, that was closed out, or is in process of being closed out, and it's going to add $190 million of valuation to the district. And because the district is already in relation to state averages, our valuation per student is higher than state average. What happens is the state then says, okay, the local folks can afford to pay more. And so we actually lost about $1.4 million in state aid which now shifts over to the levy. And that's the equalization process in a real nutshell. If you look at federal sources, we've got federal sources of revenue, and a lot of that is the Titles 1 through 5 grants. That'll be our biggest sources of federal revenue. And our federal revenue is really a very small part of our budget. The reason that is a lot of those funding pieces are based on free and reduced lunch count percentages. And our percentages in the district here are very low, so we don't qualify for much federal funding. Go to the next page, or if I go to the next page, at the top, you'll see other revenues. And the line I'll just draw your attention to is 990, which is miscellaneous. And you'll see we go from 17,000 to 28,000, all of a sudden to 1,312,000. And 1,300,000 of that is one-time revenue from the TIF district terminating. The city, the county, the school district all will receive a portion of the funds left over from that TIF district being closed out. So that's one-time revenue. And again, in your books, if you turn to page 24, okay, and so that, again, that 1,300,000 for the 08-09 budget is our estimate of TIF revenue. And again, that's a one-time revenue. That's very important to know that, one-time revenue. If we look into the expenditures and other financing sources, you can see how much we're spending for instruction. And I won't go into a lot of great detail there, but then we break it apart into support services, the next section, and then non-program transactions. One of the areas that you look, if you see under under support services, or support sources rather, the line 250000 business administration, that's all of our different contracts for capital improvements in the district, including the $1.3 million that we will take out of fund balance for the construction of Rivercrest. So you'll see those numbers bounce around there a little bit. The previous year we took a little over $3 million out for Rivercrest and Administrative Service Center. So that's why those numbers are up and down. If you look under non-program transactions, the first line under interfund transfers represents the difference for our special education fund. Special education gets their revenue through state source and federal grants, and what's left over after you pull the expenses out, the general fund then covers. So that's the portion of special education expenses that are funded through the general fund. If you look at the next section, special project funds. Special project funds are grants. We have grants in Fund 21, and then for us, special education is Fund 27. So that's adding those two funds together. That's the way the state wants us to report it. But we add those two funds together, and you can see the revenues, the other financing sources, and again, that includes other financing sources, also includes the district fund, general fund 10 revenue, and then the total expenditures. And we've done some things in staffing and special education to comply with the law. There's a lot of legal compliance with staffing and special education. And we've also, I know Barb has done comparisons and looked at DPI recommendations, and so we've attempted to meet some of those goals in the special education area. The last section down at the bottom is debt service. That's Fund 39. and that's all of the voter-approved debt. So we can see under total revenues and other financing sources, we go from 14 million down to 4.9 million, back up to 10 million. The reason we're bouncing around there is in 06, 07, that was the major influx of our money for the construction of Rivercrest from the sale of the bonds. Then in 07, 08, we're kind of back down to normal. And then in 08, 09, we did just complete in July financing of some older bonds where we were able to take advantage of some lower interest rates. So that refinancing, though the proceeds from those bonds are included in the revenue. And conversely, they're also included under the line 282 refinancing. So 5.3 million was what was refinanced. Any questions on the first two pages? Okay. Moving on to page 25. Capital Projects Fund, that holds all of the expenditures for the construction of Rivercrest. And so you can see that our revenues there, and I'm not going to get it as it gets a little bit confusing, but depending on whether we had our short-term financing in 06, 07 was about $9,784,000, and then we turned around and refunded. Some of that was they were bond anticipation notes, and so we refinanced back because they're a short note, and to take advantage of interest rates again and some savings, we immediately turned around and refinanced those notes into bonds a few months later. But you can see expenditures, $10,331,000 for 07, 08, and then projecting $1,700,000 for 08, 09. Under food service, we have a little asterisk there because we want to point out that food service and the fund immediately below that, community service, are really funds that are fee-based activities. They don't have an impact on a local levy. They're all fee-based. Food service does receive some federal and state funding, but for the majority, those revenues are for students paying for the lunches. And you can see the numbers for each one of those. And then going into community service. Community service includes school-age care and our community service classes and expenditures for those operations. The very last one, package and cooperative funds. You can see we've gone up it's really a cost-neutral program. Our revenue is equal to the costs, and the costs are from grants that are received through the state. And we received a boost to that revenue this year, or for 08, 09, due to some special grant dollars for certified nursing program. And so, again, that is a cost-neutral item. And then the very last item, we do disclose our other post-employment benefits trust fund activity, and those are the dollars that we set aside to meet our obligations for the folks that have retired contractually. They have that in their contract. And you can see the activity for the year there. Any questions on page 25? Okay, if not, that concludes the review of last year and the current budget year.
Okay, thanks, Tim. And again, we're going to be going over this information a little more thoroughly as we go into the annual meeting session, but Tim wanted to just brief board members on what to expect prior to that meeting. So, any questions, comments? If not, I think that was the last item on our agenda. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We have a motion by Brian.
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion's approved. Thank you, everyone.